So I think that the right-leaning lifted increase, God, that is a mouthful, right? Say that 5 times fast. Right-leaning lifted increase, right-leaning lifted increase, right-leaning lifted increase, right-leaning lifted increase. Today, I'm going to share with you my favorite increase. Yes, of course, I have a favorite increase. Now, most patterns will call for a make one. Sometimes you'll see a knit front and back, but those are not my favorite increases. My favorite increase is the lifted increase. What I love about this increase is that it is so discreet. Sometimes it seems like it's nearly invisible. It's pretty straightforward to do. It's very easy to substitute it for a make one or a knit front and back, and it's just a great tool to have in your toolbox. So hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and find out how to do the lifted increase. So as we get into this, I want to very quickly just show you what the lifted increase looks like versus a make one. But before I do that, just a quick reminder that down in the description box, if you want to skip to a different part of the video, like Carrie, I don't want to see anything, just show me how to do it. I do have timestamps down below, so you can go down and click and get to the part of the video that you'd like to watch. Also, down in the description box, you will find a list of materials and resources that I think are useful from today's video. Some of these will have clearly marked affiliate links. If you click on one of those links and do some shopping, I might earn a small commission, and this really does help support my channel. So if you utilize one of my affiliate links, or you just leave me a super thanks or a tip through Buy Me a Coffee, thank you so much. It is so greatly appreciated. So here I have this project. This is a mitt that I actually made when I was working on the Master Hand Knitter course, level 1, that I didn't end up finishing because it actually kind of sucked the joy out of knitting for me for a while. This was the final project. It was a glove and it called for doing make one increases, so I followed the pattern. And I always feel like with these make one increases, you can very clearly see where those increases are. It's very obvious where the stitch has been twisted in order to do that increase. It's not unattractive. Oops. Okay, you can tell I never finished this glove. It's not unattractive, right? Like, that's not unattractive what's going on the gusset. But it's not totally discreet. Compare that with this project that I have. This is a recently completed project, the March Flowers by Carrie Bullock Ozcan Design. I actually changed the pattern and incorporated a thumb gusset into it. And when I did, I chose to do the lifted increase. And if you look how discreet my increases are. It looks like these thumb gusset stitches are just growing out of the side of the glove, right? It is so discreet. It is so beautiful. But let's just compare the thumb gusset of these two, and you can just see the difference. Now that you've kind of seen what a lifted increase looks like versus a make one, let's look at how we actually do it. So anytime you're doing an increase, you're basically creating a new column of stitches in between two existing columns. The way that the lifted increase does this is by knitting into the row below of a stitch. So you end up having two stitches coming out of the same purl bump, and it's like the new stitches sprouting out from the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place markers where I'm going to do a right-leaning lifted increase and a left-leaning lifted increase, and I'm putting that stitch marker into the purl bump that I'm going to work into, the purl bump on the row below. So to do a right-leaning lifted increase, I'm going to take my right needle, I'm going to bring it behind the purl bump on the row below. You can see where my marker is, okay? And I'm bringing my needle behind that purl bump like this, so I can lift it up on my needle. That's it. And that's why it's called a lifted increase, because you're You're lifting that stitch from the row below up on your needle to knit into it. Now I have the purl bump from the row below on my needle and the stitch, the 6th stitch of this row on my needle. I'm going to work into that purl bump, just knit a stitch like I would off the needle, okay? I have now worked my increase. And now I'm going to just knit into my next stitch. And boom, there it is. There is my lifted increase. Let's look at this again in slow motion. So I take my right needle, I bring it behind the purl bump on the row below, and I lift that purl bump up onto the left needle so that I can work into it as if it were a regular stitch. And then I just continue knitting all my other stitches as I regularly would. That is the long way to do the right leaning lifted increase. But there's an even faster way to do it. You don't have to lift this purl bump up onto the needle to work into it. What I normally do is I take my right needle and I bring it in front of the purl bump on the row below, stick my needle into it like this, okay? You can see how that looks. Then I knit my stitch, pull it through, then I knit into that stitch next to it. And now I've done another lifted increase, okay? And you can see how quick that is to do. I'll do it one more time just so you can see it clearly. Take my right needle, push it through the purl bump on the row below, wrap my yarn, pull that loop through, then I work into the next stitch. Here's the important part. Okay, this is the important part because usually what the directions are going to tell you next is increase 1, knit 5, or something like that. It's really important that this stitch here that is right next to the lifted increase you just did counts as your knit 1. So you have your stitch here that you created by working into the row below, and then your knit 1 is the stitch next to it. So I think that the right leaning lifted increase, especially when you get used to it and you're just diving your needle into the purl bump on the row below, is a pretty straightforward movement to do. It's very quick and it's efficient and it's so discreet and looks so polished in the end. I mean, like, this increase is just amazing. But there is its mirror, which is the left leaning lifted increase. Now say that 5 times fast. Left leaning lifted increase, left leaning lifted increase, left leaning, see? Tough to do that one. But the left leaning lifted increase has an additional wrinkle to it. The difference between the right leaning lifted increase and the left leaning lifted increase is which side of the stitch on the row below that we're going to work into. For the right leaning lifted increase, here's the stitch on the row below that I'm going to work into, and it's worked on the right side of it. For the left leaning lifted increase, I want to work on the left side of it. But there's this stitch right here that's kind of on the way. So I gotta get to the left side of the stitch on the row below. So I go ahead and I knit that stitch, and now I work into the row below. But take notice of where that stitch is. I'm gonna turn my work over. Remember, I put the marker in the purl bump of the stitch that I want to work into to create my increase. And notice it is not the purl bump next to the needle. The left leaning lifted increase gets worked where this marker is. So it's always going to be the second purl bump from the needle. So here's my needle, that's the first purl bump from the needle, that's the second purl bump from the needle. That is the stitch on the row below where you want to create your increase. To do this, I'm going to take my needle, my left needle, and I'm going to put it into that second purl bump from the front. So I'm going to bring my left needle from the front, enter it up, and then put it up on my needle like this. All right? Then I can work my stitch, and boom, there it is. There is the left leaning lifted increase. Okay? Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do this again. In slow motion. Again, I'm going to look down and find the second purl bump
from my needle. Then with my left needle, I'm going to enter that purl bump from the front. Then I'm going to lift that purl bump up onto my right needle, and note that my right needle is behind my left one, all ready to knit the stitch.
So like I said, the left leaning lifted increase, there's a little bit more of a wrinkle to it. You know what? Truth of the matter, the fact is, if you work that left leaning lifted increase into the purl bump that's against the needle, most likely nobody's gonna know. But the technically correct thing to do is to work into the second purl bump down. So that's why I taught it that way. The biggest drawback really of the lifted increase is that because you are working into the stitch below, it's best to use lifted increases when there's at least one plain round of knitting between the increase rows. If you have a pattern where you have, an increase row followed by another increase row, and those increases are stacked on top of each other, the lifted increase then isn't ideal. In those cases, I would then choose to do either a make one or a knit front and back. But other than that, I think almost any time that I'm working on a stockinette fabric like this, I think that the lifted increase is so much more discreet than even the make one. And the make one's very discreet. Don't get me wrong, a make one is very discreet as well. It's just not as discreet. However, make ones you find far more often in patterns. So if you, like me, want to do a substitution, how do you go about it? When you are substituting increases for one another, no matter what type of increase you're substituting with another type of increase, the thing to always remember about it is that you are creating a new column of stitches in between two existing columns, okay? So let's say I have a pattern and it says knit 6, make 1, okay? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is stitch 7. Whether you make one left or make one right, both are going to be worked into the same spot, this same running thread between stitch 6 and 7. It's just how that thread gets twisted is what creates a left versus right leaning make one. But a right leaning versus left leaning lifted increase is determined on what side of the stitch you work into. So this is where I want my new column of stitches to be. If I want it to be right leaning, I want that increase to sprout off the right side of the stitch below. Well, that right side is in stitch 7. So I would dive down into my needle or into the purl bump and work it, and I have, and then I would knit the next stitch and go to my next spot, and I would have a right leaning lifted increase. Let's say I'm wanting a left leaning lifted increase, meaning that that lifted increase is sprouting from the left side of a stitch. Well, to get to the left side of a stitch, that would be stitch 6, because that's where I have access to the left side of a purl bump. So I would go 2 purl bumps down, lift, 2 purl bumps down, lift up that purl bump, work into it, and now I have a left leaning knit 1, and now I have a left leaning lifted increase in the same spot as I have my make 1. All right, so that's a thing to think about when you're wanting to substitute a lifted increase for a make 1, is you just have to consider which stitch on the row below you're going to work into. Are you going to work into the stitch to the left of that spot? All right, where the make 1 would be, or are you going to work into the stitch to the right of that spot where the make 1 would be? If you want a left leaning lifted increase in place of a make 1 left, you work to the stitch to the right of where the make 1 would be. If you want a right leaning lifted increase in place of a make 1 right, then you work into the stitch below that's into the stitch to the left of where the make one would be. So I learned about the lifted increase from this book, Increase, Decrease, 99 Step-by-Step Methods by Judith Durant. And I gotta say, I absolutely love this. This is such a great knitting reference book. It covers all the increases, all the decreases, single increases, double increases. You get clear illustrations of how they're done and what they look like. So you can know if you're looking at a make one center double increase, for example, versus some other increase, or you know what a knit one front and back is gonna look like versus a make one. It's just a really great resource, and I love it too because it's spiral bound and it's really compact. So like, this is a book that if you wanted to, you could throw in your knitting bag and just have it with you all the time. So yeah, I cannot recommend this book highly enough if you really want to increase your repertoire, your toolbox of making new columns and stitches or taking them away. I would love to hear from you now. What are your favorite techniques for increasing? Do you like the make one? Have you tried a lifted increase before? What are your thoughts on it? Do you have any tips or tricks about increases that you'd like to share? Please let me know down in the comments below. You know, the great thing about being on social media with all of this, with Fiber Friends, is we all get to learn together. So please let me know any thoughts you have, any questions. I'd love to hear from you. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with other making friends. Liking videos, sharing videos, commenting on videos are all great ways to help support the channel. And if you'd like to, right now, right this instance, watch some more videos from me, at the end there are going to be a couple video suggestions that pop up, and you'll see my face in the corner, and if you click on my face, subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I don't know what I'm doing. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy making. Bye. Okay. Ooh. I feel like this shawl is gonna be changing positions throughout the entire video. It might turn into like Igor from Young Frankenstein, where it just switches shoulders. I have no idea where this is going to end up by the end of the video. Stick around to find out. All these woven ends, get out of the way. I didn't complete this glove. There was mistakes in it. I knitted so many of these mittens during that course. So many. Anyway, now for the right leaning lifted increase, I work to the right side of that stitch, right? Correct? So I have gone back in time. Notice my marker is still here. I've gone back in time. You're going back in time. However, the make increase, lifted increase, lifted increase, not the make one. We're not doing make ones today. We're doing lifted increases today. Nailed it. Nailed it.